Today, we're diving into something that shapes our world in a huge way. It's a powerful but also really risky economic strategy called the export trap.
So, let's just jump right in with a big question, one that really gets to the heart of all this. What if a country's greatest economic strength was also its biggest, most dangerous weakness?
Okay, so check this out. 27 years. Now, that number probably sounds pretty random, right? But it's a huge deal. That's how long it's been since China's Hang Seng stock index was at the same level it is today. Think about that. It peaked back in 1997 and has basically gone nowhere for almost 3 decades. This completely flips the script on the whole unstoppable China narrative we've been hearing for so long.
So yeah, how do we even get here? Well, it all starts with what we're calling China's export gamble.
You know, for years, China's economy was just roaring along, powered by this massive engine of real estate and infrastructure. But that engine, it's pretty much seized up. After the property market collapsed back in 2021, China had to find a new way to get things moving. And so, they're desperately trying to fire up a new engine, manufacturing exports. We're talking specifically about the new three: EVs, batteries, and solar panels.
But here's the problem. This massive export push is hitting a brick wall of global pushback. It's not just the US and the EU complaining about being flooded with cheap goods. Now you've got emerging markets. We're talking India, Brazil, Turkey, you name it. They're all fighting back. They're launching their own investigations, slapping on tariffs, basically saying, hey, this flood of stuff is killing our local industries.
Okay, but here's the thing. This strategy, it's not new. Not at all. To really get what's happening right now, we need to crack open a very old economic playbook. So let's take a look.
You see, this model has been used by a ton of economic powerhouses. Think post-war Japan, even modern Germany. And the playbook is designed to do one main thing: crank up production to the max while, and this is key, holding down how much a country's own citizens can buy. And it does this with 3 main moves: keeping the currency cheap, suppressing wages, and using this powerful but kind of sneaky tool called financial repression.
All right, let's start with that last one, because it's a big one. Financial repression. What on earth is that? Well, in simple terms, it's when the government controls who gets to borrow money, and the central bank basically forces interest rates to be super low, like way lower than they would be in a normal, free market. And here's the real kicker. What this policy actually does, it's basically a hidden tax. Think about it. When interest rates are super low, it systematically moves wealth away from regular people, savers, households who get almost nothing on their savings, and gives it to big borrowers, like businesses and the government, who get to borrow all that money on the cheap.
I mean, the source material just lays it out perfectly. It says low interest rates are a transfer from households to business and government. That's it. It's a direct subsidy, and it's paid for by ordinary people to help out corporations and the state. Simple as that.
Okay, so tool number 2 in the playbook is suppressed wages. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's when a worker's pay just doesn't keep up with how much more stuff they're making, how much more productive they're getting. So let's say a worker produces, 10% more value this year, but their paycheck only goes up by 2%. You see the gap?
And yep, you guessed it. Just like financial repression, this is another hidden tax. But this time, the wealth is being transferred directly from the workers, who aren't getting paid for the extra value they create, straight into the pockets of their employers, who get to keep all that extra value as profit.
And again, our source is super blunt about it. Keeping wage growth below growth in worker productivity is another tax that transfers wealth from workers to employers. And this, right here, is a huge reason why they can keep production costs so low and make their exports so cheap. And finally, we've got the third piece of the puzzle: a cheap currency. This is when a country's central bank goes out of its way to mess with the currency markets just to keep its own currency artificially weak compared to others, like the US dollar.
So this creates our third hidden tax, and this one moves wealth from people buying imported stuff, so consumers, over to the exporters. How does that work? Well, a weak currency makes foreign goods way more expensive for people to buy at home, but at the same time, it makes your country's goods way cheaper for foreigners. It's like you're taxing imports and subsidizing exports all at the same time.
So let's put it all together. You've got these 3 hidden taxes, one on savings, one on wages, and one on consumption. When you add all that up, you get one single inevitable result. As the quote says, you're maximizing production while suppressing consumption, which means the surplus must be exported. You've literally engineered an economy that has no choice but to sell all its extra stuff to the rest of the world, Now, a playbook like this doesn't just change one country's economy. Oh no, the effects ripple out across the globe, and they create a world of massive, massive imbalances.
And when you look at China, the scale of this imbalance is just staggering. The country produces 18% of everything in the world, of global GDP, but its own people only consume 13% of the world's stuff. That 5-point gap might not sound like a lot, but it represents a gigantic surplus of production that has to go somewhere.
And look, this isn't some cultural thing. This is about policy. Get this incredible fact from The Economist. In 2022, the average person in China actually consumed 7% less than the average person in Brazil, even though China as a country produced about 40% more. That kind of gap doesn't just happen. It's the direct result of how the economy is structured.
And like we said, this isn't a new story. We've seen this pattern before. Remember Japan's export boom in the 80s? That created huge trade friction with the US. And Germany's story is maybe even clearer. Back in 2000, they made a deal to suppress wages, and their export machine just went into overdrive. And those imbalances, they played a direct role in the European debt crisis about a decade later. So all of this, all these colliding forces, it's leading to an inevitable conclusion, which brings us to our final section, the looming trade war.
All right, so here's the crucial point. This whole export model, it only works if other countries are willing and able to buy up all your extra stuff. But what happens when every country wants to be the seller and nobody wants to be the buyer? Because that's what's happening. The countries that used to be the biggest buyers, like the US, are starting to say no more and are pushing back hard.
It's almost helpful to think about this conflict in terms of weapons. On one side, you have the offensive weapons used by the export-heavy countries to grab market share. All the things we just talked about, subsidies, suppressed wages, currency manipulation. And now, the other countries are firing back with their defensive weapons, tariffs and import quotas.
And all of this leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. In a full-blown global trade war, who is really more vulnerable? The country that can't buy the stuff it wants, or the country that can't sell the stuff it absolutely has to sell just to keep its whole economy from grinding to a halt?